Welcome back to the morning show with Jeff and Will here on AM 1700 WRCR, Haverstraw, WRCR.com. And now we welcome in Tina Traster. She edits RCBizJournal.com. She runs the whole website. Anything on there, it's because of her. Thank you, Tina, for joining us as always. What's going on?
Well, thank you. Good morning, Rockland land. I am going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to start with, it came to my attention that a petition is circulating around the proposed animal shelter in Haverstraw. And the petition basically is urging town supervisors and town board members to reject the participation in and passage of the intergovernmental agreement with Rockland Green that would burden local taxpayers for 30 years with $40 million in debt repayment of principal and interest on the debt, as I said, for the shelter. Now, I think what happened is about 2.5 weeks ago or so, we put out a very, very detailed story that really showed what this looked like with the numbers. And I think it really has shocked the Rockland residents, Rockland taxpayers, who never really understood, the sort of behind-the-scenes numbers. I think that this project has not really had a lot of transparency. It's not been something. It's been something that's been, navigated by Rockland Green, which does include all of the town supervisors. But I don't think that the general populace has really had a chance to, I think, weigh in or to understand what the numbers really look like. We have been, of course, reporting all along the way, with every move, beginning with Howard Phillips, who's the chairman of Rockland Green, coming to the legislature a couple of years ago and telling them that this would be an $8 million project in an effort to persuade the planned rebuild for High Tor Animal Shelter in Pomona to quash that. And while he was successful, there had never been any kind of number projections. There was never a sense of what this shelter was going to cost. Well, now we know. We know that 4 of the 5 towns are according to the bond offering statement, only 4 of the 5 towns are represented to ultimately sign off on this intermunicipal agreement, which is curious because it seems that Orangetown has kept itself out of this. In addition to that, based on the language of the offering statement, it would seem that it's not a done deal until each of the rest of the 4 towns signs on to the intermunicipal agreement. So there still seems to be some agency within each town and its town board to decide whether or not to sign on to this and whether or not to strap taxpayers with $40 million in debt repayment over 30 years. Also want to say that, the bonds. Let's just talk about the bonds. Oh, let me just, before I get on to the bond subject. In addition to the $40 million debt repayment, what towns and taxpayers are looking at is $1.3 million annually in debt service. So that's one nut. And then the other thing is, and I think this is probably what has alarmed people and why this petition has garnered more than 200 signatures in just a few days, is that right now, in 2025, taxpayers are paying $2 million in operating costs. Now that is up from $1.4 million only a couple of years ago. And the projection is that this is going to rise up to $2.5 million just next year. And then there's some estimate that it'll be a 5% increase year over year, which many believe is an unrealistic number given the size and the scope of this project. The petition itself cites two things. One is both the what many believe is just an absolutely terrible location, and the other thing is the size and the scope of this project. I mean, is it really justifiable to put taxpayers on the hook to this degree in a county that's as small as Rockland, and that has never had any kind of precedent of needing, a shelter that is so enormous. So let me talk about the bonds for a second. Half of the bonds, now I know this is a little geeky, but try to stay with me here. Half of the bonds are at 5.5% and half are at 6.5%. And I've heard some chatter about refinancing them when the rates come down. Well, as an aside, we're not seeing any rates coming down. But that aside, most of the bonds are not callable and cannot be refinanced. And the ones that can be called are subject to repayment of what's called original issue premium, which is the extra money Rockland Green received when it guarantees the higher interest rate. So that has to be paid back. They would have to issue a larger bond, even more than the $18 million that's been signed off on, to redeem, what they've obligated the Rockland taxpayer to pay back. So this is what right now Rockland is looking at. I am not an attorney, but I have read the offering statement, and the language seems to indicate that when the so-called shelter is built, that's when the towns will sign off on the intermunicipal agreement. So I guess the point of the petition, and I guess the point of asking these questions now, is that if these petitioners are persuasive in getting any one or more of these towns to put on the brakes and say, wait a minute, this maybe just doesn't make sense, and a town decides not to sign on to an intergovernmental agreement, then perhaps the project will not hold, because, I don't know, if you have only 3 towns supporting this, then it really becomes it becomes undoable.
And Tina, let me ask you a question before you go on. Let me ask you a question or two because we've gone over this quite a bit in the past too, and I know there's new reporting here, but let me ask you a couple of questions before we move on because I want to cut to the chase a little bit. Question: where is this petition available? I have not seen it. Where is that? Where is it located?
Well, I've been seeing it. It's on change.org. That's the petition platform.
Okay.
And I've been seeing it all over Facebook. I would say that multiple people have been posting it and reposting it. So I've been seeing it all over the place.
Okay, So it may show up in my Facebook feed at some point. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll look on change.org for it as well. But let's fast forward a little bit because. Not you and I, but there have been arguments going on for years about the future of High Tor. For years, we've hearing complaints about High Tor. It's not sufficient for to handle the animals that we have in the county, and this goes back well before even COVID started, over 5 years ago. There was the hope to be getting something then. Nobody liked the location where it was. The fire training officials, which is located there, and the recycling facility that's located there, say it's a bad location to keep animals. They do fireworks at Boulder Stadium in the summer. It's bad for the animals. So they found another location in Haverstraw. And now you're talking about how the location in Haverstraw is no good. It's near this site, and it's near the roadways, and it's no good either. What site would be better? How much should it cost? And when could we possibly see it done?
Okay, all good questions. And I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer that, but let me give it my best. Let's just go back to the original High Tor site. The fire training center is not a problem, and that's been established. There's no smoke issue there, and that's been absolutely established.
Well, I wouldn't say that. There are the folks from the fire training center itself have argued they're not good neighbors for a place like High Tor.
I've heard the opposite. So
okay.
I'm not sure, but I've heard the opposite, that that they don't do the kind of training anymore that is impactful in terms of fire exposure or smoke exposure. So that is what I've heard. I can certainly look into that. Secondly, but that piece of county-owned land is some 13 acres or so, and it's where the rebuild was slated for years and years and years. There's lots of space, and the best part of the space is that there's lots of outdoor space for dog walking and dog runs and all that kind of outdoor space that a shelter really requires, as opposed to the one that's being slated, which is literally on a skinny road, ironically named Ecology Road, and it's sandwiched between a landfill on one side that's still leaching methane and a big open construction landfill on the other side. I mean, you can you can stand on Ecology Road, open your arms wide, and that is practically the road. It is really skinny. And on the other side of that road is going to be, proposed 454,000 square foot truck distribution, 24/7. I mean, horrible kinds of, truck backing up noises. With regard to Boulder Stadium and the fireworks, that is a problem. However, the shelter has always traditionally found ways to adapt to that. And if the Boulders, I don't know, could be persuaded to be better neighbors, if the shelter were to remain on that site and be rebuilt on that site for way less money, then I think the answer to and also a smaller shelter, because I think there's agreement that we don't need a 28,000 square foot shelter. It's just over the top. I think that, if there is such a thing as silent fireworks. I think that would be an easier thing to try to negotiate with the good folks over at Boulders, rather than to saddle taxpayers with $40 million in debt repayment and to put the shelter in really just a very terrible location, as people are saying.
So real quick, in less than 30 seconds, what should it cost, where should it be, and when will it get done?
Okay, well, this depends on, whether Rockland Green is proactive and rethinks the plan that it has right now. They have already bonded $18 million, so I don't know, what that looks like exactly. I don't know, what the finances of that are. But if you scale back this thing from 28,000 and I don't know, put it, in half, okay, maybe then you're closer to the 10 or 15 million that was originally cited, but at least on the High Shore site where it exists now. But then at least you eliminate the problem, all the environmental problems that are associated with this proposed conversion of a warehouse in a really unfavorable location.
And Tina, I'm sorry, we got to leave it there. We got another show coming up after this. Thank you so much for your time as always. We'll bring this up again next week, and I'm sure you'll be covering it on the pages of rcbizjournal.com. Thank you so much, Tina. Talk to you again next Monday.
Okay, have a great week.
Thanks, you too.